Very dedicated and wise group of people called past presidents. Every Conservancy board president goes on to join the past president's council. I often think of it as our version of the Senate because it's a lifetime appointment given to those who have demonstrated exceptional leadership. Many of the original founders are here today and still work as volunteers on behalf of the organization. Our first executive director, Ron Reed, is not here in person, but joins us from home and still works as a part-time contractor. Outgoing executive director, Mark Bissett, is also here. We'll be saying more about him later. But for now, know that he has stayed on as the part-time acquisition specialist. In other words, every year, the collective wisdom of the organization increases, the member, donor, and volunteer base increases, and we keep getting stronger. The past presidents work on special projects, and one of the most brilliant projects they've come up with is the Hartwood Fund. With great foresight for the troubled times that lay ahead, the Hartwood Fund was established as an endowment whose income is dedicated to supporting the infrastructure of the organization, to ensure that we can continue to operate forever. In 2022, longtime supporter Homie Bam decided to make his pledge to the Hartwood Fund, and he has offered to say a few words today about what motivated him to make that decision. Homie, come on up.
Good afternoon. I'm Homie Bam, and in our will, we had the Coochie Conservancy as one of the organizations that we were going to donate to when we died. It seems like there's been a lot of people speaking about dying. Anyhow, at first I thought that the amount that we would be giving wouldn't be significant enough to make a contribution to the Hartwood Fund. But Adam Thompson, who's here today, and one of the original, maybe founders of this organization, said to me that any amount is good. And when we talked about it, it was our possible contribution was not going to be that insignificant. So I urge everybody here, especially if you made a will, to make sure that the person who administers your will knows that it should go to the Hartwood Fund, because that way we can ensure our lives to carry on forever. So I urge everybody here to do so. I'm just going to say one short bit about how I got into conservation. When I was a student at the University of London, I had a mentor who was a couple, Australian artists, and they introduced me to Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. And that book had such an important effect on my life that it has continued to affect my decisions. And so, thank you very much.
Thank you, Homie, and a big thank you to everyone we refer to as the Hartwoodies. So now we're going to hear from Jack Booth with the Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Jeffersonia. It's good to see everyone here in person this year after the last couple of years. And last year Bob Sullivan had the honor of doing the Treasurer's Report. So you're stuck with me again this year. So I would also like to welcome everyone here, and it's good to see faces in person, and it's good to see all the seats getting filled up in that. There was a few people that were a little worried in that about having quorum here in that about 1:45. But I said, no, people come in the last 10 minutes, and miraculously, there we are. So it is my pleasure to present the financial statements for the year ended October 31st, 2022. The audited statements and annual report are available on the website, and they were available on the side counter as you came in on that to pick up and review. As in past years, I will highlight a number of items from the financial statements rather than bore you all to tears with going through it in detail. And that, as outlined in the financial report, and that the results were not as planned or as budgeted, and that much to outgoing ED Mark Fassette's chagrin. But life is never always straightforward. The decline in the financial markets in the first 3 quarters, as most of you are likely aware, and that of 2022, resulted in us having an investment loss of $73,000 for the 2022 year, and a $40,000 decrease in the stock donations from the previous year. As the financial summary information, that if we have, yes, there we go, thank you, reveals that total revenue for 2022 was well below 2021, and with expenses only down about 5 or a little more than 5%. If we could go on to the next one with the details, perfect, thank you. The statement of operations and the changes in net assets is on page 5 of the financial statements and provides the details that were behind the previous graphs. This statement shows that we had a $281,000 reduction in investment revenue from 2021 to 2022. And that accounted for most of the reduction in our revenue year over year. The second reason for the reduction in revenue was, as been referred to before, is COVID. And that COVID and that the continuing effects of it has impacted in that our ability to get things done on a timely basis, that being primarily in that appraisals and surveys, and that properties were either being donated or were purchasing. And that is backed up, and we were hoping to have more properties done this year, so that impacts the revenue, and we don't have the properties being acquired, so we're not recognizing the donation revenue that we have. And we've got quite a bit of revenue being deferred in that. I'll mention that later on in that, but there's over $300,000 in revenue deferred in that we have available for purchases and acquisitions. So this in turn delayed the acquisitions of properties, which also shows in the expense figures and that our property acquisition and easement acquisition expenses were significantly below budget. So those two combined in that resulted in, numbers being significantly lower than last year. A couple other items I'll point out in this area, and that is the subcontract expense was $23,000 below the budget amount. And that again was due to the pandemic. We're having difficulty getting field work done on a quick basis and this has been an ongoing problem for the last 3 years. So hopefully in that, as we're coming out of the pandemic more and more, that this will improve over the next couple of years. And the wages and benefit figure were $51,000 over budget according to the statement there. However, our budget only includes actual paid expenditures, whereas the actual figures for the year include $76,000 in donated time and volunteer time that Neil has already alluded to, which was primarily in that maintenance of properties and the community science program. So we were actually, on an actual expenditure basis, $25,000 ahead of budget and that for salary and wages. Long and the short of it is, it was a poor year. We ended up with a $40,000 loss for the year. Now, I will briefly go over the statement of financial position, which is referred to also as the balance sheet in that, which is page 4 of the financial statements. A majority of the short-term investments, about $1,168,000, is actually invested for the long term. They are classified as short-term. Now, this is getting boring accounting stuff, but I've had this question in the past. They're shown as short-term because the Conservancy has access to those funds within a year. So that's the definition of why they're in short-term. There was a $51,500 decrease in the short-term investments, primarily because of the investment loss last year. Now, the liabilities of the corporation, and that total $430,000. and asset section of the financial statements. Thanks to the Hardwood committee and that, which has already been alluded to in that, the investments, and this is the actual money we received, not the pledges, increased by $60,000 during the year, and now over $520,000, $520,000 is the actual funds that we have received and have on hand. The acquisition of the Nicholson Nature Reserve, and that added $100,000 to the properties that we hold. And with the investment loss this past year, we didn't want that impacting the endowment funds or our reserve funds and that. So the board made the decision that to approve a transfer of $53,000 from our President's Reserve, which is some of our operating funds and that, to cover the deficit due to the investments and that in these two funds. So that decreased the President's Reserve from $217,000 to $164,000. But during the previous 2 years, we had added $100,000 to the President's Reserve Fund, and that mainly because of strong investment returns those years. So the Conservancy continues to be in wonderful financial position, no long-term debt, and $1,680,000 in endowment and reserve funds. So we are still solid and good for the future. The financial results of the last couple of years have been a little unusual in these trying times. And that we had a huge surplus, and that in 2021 of $318,000, and then we had the loss this year of $40,000, which is just all over the board. And me being an accountant, I like things being more orderly than that. So to me, it made more sense to look at the average for the 2 years. So if I look them on average, we average an income of $139,000 and investment income of $67,000. And that lets me sleep better at night. So, and as Neil's also alluded to, the annual financial statements that reflect items that we can readily value in that, but they do not reflect thousands and thousands of hours that all volunteers, all our supporters, board members, and former board members, and former EDs, and everything like that have added, and that which impacts all the operations of the Conservancy at that. And it's just wonderful to see all the involvement and all the turnout that we have here. So thank you everyone. Now, without our wonderful staff and everybody else that supports us in that, we wouldn't be where we are. And I want to thank everybody for the wonderful support and everything in that, and people's commitment in that keep this organization moving forward positively. And it's just a great organization to be with. I would also like to thank our auditors, Jennifer Mann and Debbie Trippy, Ian Trippy, Chartered Professional Accountants, for the kind performance of the audit for the year. Now, that's my long-winded speech. Are there any questions on anything? And if you're tired of hearing me talk, don't ask any questions. So seeing no hands in that, then there's a couple motions I have to make in that to make sure that we get everything properly approved and keep everybody happy. So the first motion in that is to receive the financial statements for the year ended October 31st, 2022. Can I have somebody move this? Okay. Thank you. And can I have a seconder? Mark or Neil? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? I declare the motion carried. Now, the second motion is to appoint the auditor for the coming year. So it is to appoint Ian Trippy, Professional Corporation, Chartered Professional Accountants as auditor for the year ending October 31st, 2023. Can I have somebody move this? Okay. And the seconder. Oh. Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Those opposed? I declare this one carried also. Thank you very much. I will now turn the meeting back over to Dorothea, and if anybody has any questions at a later time about financials or anything, please contact the office and they can put you through the meeting. Thank you very much.
I just have to point out, it's giving me a lot of pleasure that Mark is enjoying a beer in the audience. In fact, I think the entire Bissett family is. Anyway, it's nice to see you so relaxed, Mark.
Okay, next tab. Great.
It is working. Okay, so let's move now to the election of the board. And the Conservancy's nominating committee has recommended a slate of candidates made up of the following people. Kathy Hunt for president. Maybe if you want to stand up if you're here. We have a few people not here today. Kathy Hunt for president. And for directors, Neil Gray, Jane Bonfield, Lisa Neville, who's not here, Jack Booth, Janet Mason, Bob Sullivan, Dale Ledbetter, and new board member Morris Ilniak. I will now ask 3 times if there are any further nominations from the floor. Now our incoming board president, Kathy Hunt, is going to say a few words.
Thank you, Dorothea. Of course, I'm here thanks to so many people. And first of all, it's all of you in the room and at home on Zoom who just voted for this great board of directors. So thank you very much. There are a couple of people I'd like to particularly thank for the reason I'm up here today. 2 of the first people I met when I moved here really about 30 years ago were Ron Reed and Janet Brand. And it was through Ron and Janet that I learned about the Conservancy, and I soon started working with Ron and the Conservancy in my role as a communications specialist. We worked together on one of the organization's first newsletter and other public awareness activities. This was a great way for me to learn about the organization and also gain an understanding of how important land trusts are. Since that time, back in the early 2000s, I have remained a member of the Conservancy, but not quite as active. But it was a few years ago that, again, it was Ron Reed who inspired me. I attended the official opening of the Ron Reed Nature Reserve. And when I got there, I was absolutely blown away by the amount of energy and just the positive vibe of all the people at this event. And I was really impressed with how the organization had grown since when I first started working with them. And I said to myself, okay, I have to get more involved. And really, I must have said this out loud because in no time, I found myself on the member of the board of directors. And now I feel extremely fortunate that I had this experience on the board because I was able to see firsthand how Mark Mark's leadership and how he and his amazing staff made this growth happen. It was a phenomenal experience and still is. I'm excited about my role as president. I guess I am president now. I was going to say forthcoming role for 3 reasons. First, I'm really honored to represent such a positive force. The people in this room, at home on Zoom, and all of our supporters, volunteers, it's just an amazing amount of energy. And I'm really honored to be your representative. Secondly, to be able to work with this board, the board's not there anymore, but they're here. So work with this board, I'm really looking forward to this because it's such an amazing and smart group of people. Like you just heard Jack talk about all of the financial reports, so I'm really counting on them and looking forward to continuing working with them. And finally, I'm really looking forward to working with Dorothea, who I've always respected and admired, and I think she is the perfect leader to take us into the future. And just in closing, I wanted to mention that when I looked at the annual report, you may have noticed that on the cover, the theme is called Reconnecting Nature. And I loved it. And by the way, the annual report I'm up to, way to go, Tanya. But I think with Dorothea and the amazing staff that we have, along with all of you together, we can accomplish this, reconnecting with nature. So, no, it's reconnecting nature, but we're also reconnecting with nature. Thank you very much.
I'll also have to add that the thing I remember about Kathy coming out to Run Green Nature Reserve for the opening was that you arrived by bicycle. It was very impressive. Okay. Before we go any further, I'm going to ask you to put your hands together and clap one more time. This time it's for Courtney Baker, Madeline Fournier, and Tanya Clark, who put together this amazing event. Courtney coordinated, Madeline supported, and Tanya made the annual report and ensured that this PowerPoint presentation wasn't a jumble of fonts and styles. I also want to acknowledge Toby Rowland, our conservation biologist, who's doing the live feed for Zoom participants, supported by Aisha Agarwal, our conservation analyst, who is juggling both PowerPoint presentation and the Zoom link up. Please stand up. Okay. This year, the world signed a historic agreement to protect biodiversity, and it happened right here in Canada. The Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework was signed on December 22nd, 2022. The main goal, which Canada advocated for and has agreed to, is to protect 30% of Canada's land, ocean, and inland waters by 2030. It's known as the 30 by 30. It didn't get as much attention as it deserves because biodiversity never seems to. But I heard a board member say earlier this year that the reason they got involved with the Conservancy is the global biodiversity crisis. You know, it's why I do this work, and I expect it matters a lot to me too. The number one reason for loss of biodiversity is development. And this past year, I think it's fair to say we all spent a lot of time thinking about development pressure in our area. From the city of Orillia wanting to expand their boundaries to allow for the growth of new housing developments, to the province compromising the greenbelt and some of our protected wetlands, it's been a hot topic. And it got me thinking about how the Couchiching region is doing at protecting 30% of the land. The next series of 4 historic aerial photos are from the collection of Marcel Rousseau. I'm gradually building a presentation from them to take to municipal councils through our region. I hope you can see them. I know there's a lot of glare. Can you actually make out those maps? Is it okay? All right. So we're going to be looking at Aurelia and the surrounding area, but it's meant to stand in as a proxy for development and growth anywhere in our region. The same thing is happening in Beaverton, Brecon, Coldwater, all throughout the area. Yeah, I remember when Aurelia used to take pride in being against too much change and growth. And it's kind of served us fairly well until that juggernaut rolling north finally arrived at our doorstep 15 or 20 years ago. In this first photo from 1945, there was no Highway 11. North of the Lions Oval Arena and west of Westmount Drive, it was mostly farms and forests. So this photo is flipped upside down. I apologize for that. North is at the bottom of the photo and south is at the top. And this one is also from 1945. You can see Grant's Woods to the right, and above the Lions Oval is this area called Quinn's Bush. So that whole subdivision was there. And there's this amazing waterway which is marked, oops. There's this amazing waterway which we've got marked in red. I think it might be Silver Creek, but I'm not sure. And it's got tributaries flowing downhill toward Fittens Road, which we call the Fittens Springs. Today we call what's left Sundial Creek. It's the last remaining cold water stream within the city limits. And then we built the highway sometime around 1959. And that must have been a major compromise to that waterway we were just looking at. There's Wilson Point, circled at the top of the, in red. The Grant Wetland, it's in the 1950s or the 1960s. We're not sure of the exact date for these next couple. We've already started dredging out the canals that would drain the remaining wetland, which you can see just below Wilson Point wetland. And you can see Highway 11 in the upper left-hand corner. Fred Noakes is Tammy Clark's grandfather, by the way. He took these photos from there. And this is present day. According to Google Earth, this is August 8th, 2021. So earlier this year, in a letter to the editor of Aurelia Matters, Mark Bissett asked the question, what if Grant's Woods were surrounded by Westridge? And it seems obvious that if we always do what we've always done, we're going to continue expanding out to the north, south, east, and west. What's also obvious is that anything that don't put protection around is going to be developed. To the east of Highway 11, pretty much the only natural areas left are Wilson and Grant Wetland, and a provincially significant wetland just to the east of Scout Valley, which is marked in the lower corner, 2 parcels. And we're making great headway in developing the east side of Highway 11 now too. And yet, we're in a better position than anywhere to the south of us in Ontario. So far anyway, there's still a lot of reason for hope in our region. So we can think of this as our green belt. It's our blueprint for protecting nature in the region. And more than just a plan, in Carden and the Black River Wildlands, it's become a reality. Our success there in Carden and Black River was based on 3 key ingredients. Reach out to landowners and get to know people. Forge strong partnerships with other like-minded conservation organizations. And convene roundtables of all the interested parties in the area, stakeholders, and look for solutions together. And 4th ingredient, be ready. have the funds and the organizational resources in place so that we can act quickly on opportunities. So it's time to take those same ingredients and apply them on the west side of Lake Couchiching, the Bass Lake Corridor, the Minisink to Matchedash Corridor, and the Matchedash Corridor. And the exciting thing is, with a dedicated acquisition team that we now have, which includes Mark Bissett, we've got the resources to start working on it. So in the coming months and years, look for more stories from the landscape on the west side of the lake as well as the east, as we get to know these other three corridors better. So the stewardship team had a very interesting year. They usually do. Toby, Aisha, Brandon, and Alicia make up the full-time staff. Ginny Moore works on a part-time contract monitoring grassland birds for our habitat offset projects. And Ron Reed continues to make innumerable contributions, as the following story illustrates. This year, the work of the stewardship team, the community science volunteers, and our contractors really came together like never before. So it was a really hard sell, as I think we've mentioned a few times, asking the whippoorwill monitors to stop their evening full moon surveys. But a couple of years ago, we finally found another worthy project for them. Grassland birds are in serious decline in North America, and we wanted to learn more about the populations in our region. Bobolink, eastern meadowlark, and barn swallows are all listed as threatened species in Ontario and are relatively easy to identify. So we started a grassland bird monitoring program and asked volunteers to conduct roadside surveys through the countryside looking for these three species. Pictured here are some of the volunteers doing in-the-field training with Toby last spring in Carden. The results have been very encouraging. Looking just at the bobolink in 2022, we found multiple occurrences. Most of them were in the Black River Wildlands corridor, but there was also a respectable amount in Matchedash and Minisink corridors as well. Enter Ron Reed. In 2013, Ron co-authored the recovery strategy for bobolink and eastern meadowlark for Ontario. So he recommended that we initiate a delayed haying program, which provides financial incentive for farmers to put off haying their fields until after July 15th, when the nestlings are able to fly and collect the nest. And he showed us how it was done by piloting the program in 2022 with 3 farmers in Wimmera. So in 2023, we have plans to take that program region-wide and a lot bigger. What's most exciting about this recovery strategy is that within one season, we can have an immediate and positive impact on the populations of grassland birds in this region. There's hundreds of stories involving volunteers and the contributions they made to protecting nature in 2022, like the volunteers who built the boat launch at Rosebush Landing. And every year we select several and make special mention of the outstanding contributions these volunteers have made. For 4 years now, Adrienne Linus and Lorraine Morris have organized an extreme cycling event as a fundraiser in memory of their son Daniel, who loved the Carden Owl Rod. Called Blue Moose, 150 people have participated, riding from Orillia to Carden and back. To date, the event has raised $45,000 to support our work. Mary and Omar Vick have been volunteering for the Couchiching Conservancy since 1998. They've been the land stewards for Grants Woods since it was donated in 2004, and walked the forest at Grants Woods with Ron and Janet to plan out the trails. Mary was one of the earliest volunteer coordinators, and you can always count on them as they faithfully make their quarterly land stewardship visits with the rest of the team and hand in their detailed monitoring reports. Like Marion Homer, Kathy Mazik has been the land steward for Alexander Hope Smith since we acquired the property in 2007. And there's no better advocate for this nature reserve than her. Despite many ups and downs with her health, Kathy has always found a way to stay involved, such as monitoring for frogs on the side of the road. She's an ardent supporter of the Heartwood Fund and asked us to make a special pitch from her to consider becoming a Heartwood. In 2022, she was hit by an electric bike while walking on the Tedder Park Trail and has undergone multiple surgeries, and she could use some good luck and well wishes from us. Susan Crow is a relative newcomer. She contacted me a few years ago about volunteering for the new monarch monitoring program. She does that and also joined the Passport to Nature Committee, where she brings many ideas to the table, helps coordinate events, successfully convinces business to sponsor, and helps with marketing. So I think we have Susan, Mary, and Omer with us today. We have a small token of appreciation for you, and also for Kathy being really wonderful to With a growing portfolio of remote and inaccessible, oh, I'm getting some kind of feedback. Oh, it's a moose! Yeah, speaking of moose. With a growing portfolio of remote and inaccessible nature reserves, technologies such as trail cams and drones are becoming important and are giving us a whole new perspective on the landscape. Cassie Pellerin volunteered her time, equipment, and expertise to collect drone footage from several nature reserves, such as the Sweetwater Nature Reserve, which you're looking at, it's in the foreground of this shot, and Ron Reed Nature Reserve, which is in the foreground here, with QE2 Provincial Park stretching out seemingly forever in the background. Technology is going to make it possible for us to monitor two of our newest acquisitions, the Nicholson and Marley Nature Reserves, which were donated to the Conservancy in 2021. We had dedication ceremonies for both of these nature reserves in 2022. The Nicholson Nature Reserve is 100 acres in the Black River Wildlands corridor and backs onto the Head River. It is a mixture of hardwood swamp and granite outcrops. Our conservation biologist, Toby, says that the Nicholson Nature Reserve is one of the most interesting wetlands he has visited in the area. Rather than being a dense hardwood swamp, there are large open stretches of water that have to be waded through. For us, this inaccessibility is a key feature. It means there are many unique species who can get on with life without being disturbed by people. One visit to the reserve was filled with northern water thrush, and 10 species of warblers were migrating through. People who make the decision to donate their land as a nature reserve are indeed very special. We have several landowners here today. Are Janice and Gary here? We know they were planning to. Oh, terrific. That's great. And Janice and Gary Nicholson. Thank you. I didn't even need to prompt you, so I'll stick that one in my notes. So yeah, we're very grateful that we get to thank you in person for that beautiful and generous donation. At the property dedication this summer, Gary said, "I wish to dedicate this property to those who built the surrounding community and for generations to come to enjoy the beauty and natural habitat of the land." Thank you. I'm just going to let the video of the Marley property dedication from last summer speak for itself. Hope it works. That was a great day. Are any of the Marley family here today? I don't think any of them were able to join us. They were in Toronto mostly. Anyway, they treated us to traditional Estonian food. On January 30th, 2023, the Hancock and Fransky Williamson properties in Oro-Medonte were registered as conservation easements with the Pichichi Conservancy. Much to the happiness of everyone involved who worked on making this happen for 2 years. Both easements are approximately 45 acres located in the Bass Lake corridor. And I know the Franskys and the Hancocks, Fransky Williamsons, and the Hancocks are all friends as well. Ron and Sharon are in Borneo today. And they send their love from a hot and humid swamp where they said they will be doing a happy dance. The Hancock easement sits on the edge of 2 watersheds where freshwater springs bubble up from the sands of the Oro Marine. There is a stand of endangered black ash trees and forest interior habitat with many interesting birds such as nesting sapsuckers, black-throated blue warblers, and ovenbirds. Thank you, Ron and Sharon. And our reserve steward, Brandon Rock, just joined us with his family. We first got to know Robert and Evelyn Fransky when they got involved in our landowner stewardship program as community scientists. They're amazing stewards of the land, monitoring for snakes, turtles, frogs, and salamanders. The property is an interesting mix of habitats, including a beautiful hardwood swamp with blue-spotted salamanders and Blackburnian warblers. Robert and Evelyn are here today. Please stand up, Robert and Evelyn, and accept our thanks for your generosity and support. And now, we would like to unveil our next acquisition campaign, which is to protect a 400-acre alvar in Carden connecting to Wolf Run and North Bear Alvar. Ginny Moore said that Morden is one of the most pristine alvars she has seen in Carden, with very few non-native species and lots of alvar-specific species. So let's have a look. So we're currently campaigning to raise funds for the purchase, which is slated to close August 31st. It will be the 7th nature reserve protected through the Corridors campaign. We're looking to raise $387,000. Please see Tanya. All of the acquisitions that I told you about today have been due to generous donors and the hardworking acquisition team, which until very recently wasn't in my job description. So while I'm honored to be able to tell you about all of this, it happened while Mark was at the helm. I found out that Mark was planning to step away as executive director in August, just after my vacation. It was a meeting of a small committee of board members and past presidents who called themselves the transition team. It shouldn't have been a surprise because Mark has had a solid succession plan in place for years now, and I knew he had been at the job for over 13 years and must be growing tired. But still, I was surprised. When Mark and I met to discuss the transition after I had accepted the VP position, he said a few things that are indicative of his strong character. He said, "I'm hoping to be bested by you," which is exactly how he has always led the organization, with little need to boost his own ego and all his energy focused on what would deliver the most success. He said, "If you think of us as a flock of geese flying in a V formation, I'm just moving back from a root position." For any non-profit, the transition from the founding executive director to the second ED is always a tricky one. It's a make or break moment for an organization. I've long marveled at what a great choice Mark was to succeed Ron. They both developed a strong friendship and working relationship over the years. Ron can't be with us today to speak about that working relationship they've developed. We're going to hear from founder and past president Gord Ball, and then past president Margaret Pomeroy.
The plan was for Ron Reed to be here and paying tribute to Mark today, along with Margaret. But COVID scuttled that plan. Ron is stuck at home with it, but we hope he and Janet are watching. Ron and I collaborated on these remarks. Luckily for me, he can't jump in and correct me at any point. 14 years ago, when Mark was editor of the Aurelia Packet Times, he was watching the newspaper business in decline. He saw the CC job opening for an executive director. He wondered if he even had a chance at it. Janet Brand offered him some enthusiastic encouragement, and so he threw his hat in the ring. Janet, if you're out there, you deserve much credit for our having Mark over the last 14 years. Mark was up against some stiff competition. The candidates appearing beside him had long resumes and lots of experience in land conservation and natural science. However, the interview team knew that Mark had a long history of giving newspaper space to environmental causes and being on the right side of them. But they were looking for more. The Conservancy was growing at the time, and the team knew that it would continue to grow. The Cooch Conservancy needed someone with proven leadership and management skills. Mark had overseen a large staff at the packet, and he had experience with budgeting and hiring and firing. The interview team gulped hard and recommended Mark over the other top quality candidates. Mark was hired. Mark told Ron at the time that he was looking forward to working in a place where he didn't get yelled at every day, especially by readers. That first year could have been a nightmare for him. Now, don't say anything about whether it was, Mark. But he acknowledges that he was on a very steep learning curve. Ron and Janet helpfully took off to Newfoundland for 6 weeks. He quickly became comfortable working with staff and landowners and land transfers. Under Mark's leadership, the Couchiching Conservancy has become one of the stronger land trusts in the country. Mark soon became well known and highly respected in the wider land trust community, in the Ontario Land Trust Alliance, and in the National Sustainability Network. Some of us worry that somebody might come along and try to poach him, because lots of people realized that Mark was indeed a star. But he remained loyal to Aurelia and to the Couchiching Conservancy, and we're all the lucky beneficiaries of that. In Ron's words, Mark is a people person. He's very good at building relationships with people on the other side of the table. He comes across as being very genuine and committed to good and fair solutions. Mark is especially effective and genuine when supporting Conservancy volunteers and donors. He gives us all personal attention. And he quickly launched himself wholeheartedly into Couchiching Conservancy events, the Cardin Challenge, for example. As a beginning birder, Mark started out as an LBJ expert, LBJ being little brown jobs. And over the years, he became a very credible and legitimate birder. He even did the Cardin Challenge on a bike, birding on a bike. Mark came into the job already well known in the local community when word got out that he was taking over at the Couchiching Conservancy. Some people said, "Who? Mark? Mark Bissett? Really?" They were surprised. But then they came around quickly when they thought about it. That's a great appointment. That just might work. Well, work it did. In spades. Mark has been a star in the life of this wonderful, exceptional organization for 14 years. And 10,000 years from now, when the Couchiching Conservancy is still protecting half, not half, 90% of the region, people will talk about its early years. Of course, they'll talk about Ron Reed. Of course. But there will surely be a plaque on a wall honoring Mark Bissett.
Good afternoon. I'm very honored to be part of this tribute to Mark as he leaves the role of Executive Director and embarks on his next adventure. Although we'll miss his leadership, he'll be sticking around for a while as our acquisition specialist. And we have a wonderful new leader, Dorothea, who has stepped readily and ably into Mark's shoes. So, what can I say about Mark? Well, I want to talk about a couple of things. Mark as a manager, and Mark as a steward of our organizational culture. He does these things really well. Over the years working in human resources management, I have worked with many, many managers, but I have rarely worked with a manager as exceptional as Mark Bissett. He has all the necessary management skills, administrative, financial, etc. In addition, he is kind and caring, direct and honest, hardworking, humble, very strategic, and just plain smart. He has navigated some challenging management situations over the past 14 years, and he never once wavered from his core values and the core values of his organization, nor from his ability to be compassionate and to take the long view, to look out for the welfare not only of the organization, but of individual staff members, volunteers, and partners, sometimes at cost to himself. As a manager of people, he paid attention to employee compensation and championed the provision of benefits for staff. He paid attention to succession planning, and as a result, we have a terrific new executive director who has benefited from his guidance and support over the last several years. He paid attention to performance management and ensured, even though I worked in human resources, he paid attention to performance management and ensured that every staff member benefited from an annual performance review with guidance and feedback that enabled them to be the very best that they could be. He paid attention to recruitment and has hired and mentored a terrific group of staff members who share his passion for his work and for his organization. He's navigated and led us through some couple of really challenging times. One was the huge office renovation at our beautiful home in Grants Woods. I don't know if you remember, I think it was maybe the last meeting we had in person here when Mark started off his remarks and he had a picture of a toilet up there. I don't know if you remember that. But his thoughts at that point were, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And that really set it all up. Then the next thing, we're no sooner through that, and then of course we have the pandemic, which represented a huge management challenge. Remote working, all the technology, all the things that happened there. Not only has he been an effective manager of human resources, he's been a very successful manager of our physical resources. He's overseen a period of tremendous growth and capacity building. We've taken on new properties, new challenges, new partnerships under his leadership. He's an excellent negotiator and takes the long view regarding our capacity for growth, always weighing benefits and risks. He's been a very strategic leader. He led the development of the advisory council, which has been of such tremendous benefit to us, for their ability to expand our profile and attract strategic partners. He has supported the past President's Council in all of their efforts to ensure sustainability into the future. He works with many committees of the board ensuring that their work is aligned with our strategic plan. He's championed the implementation of citizen science, now known as community science, to engage our volunteers in supporting property stewardship and conservation projects. He has led relationship building with our Indigenous neighbors in the interest of building an approach to conservation that respects and incorporates Indigenous values and builds towards the challenging goals of truth and reconciliation. And he's continued to put the Conservancy in the forefront of the land trust movement, both provincially and nationally, through relationships and partnerships that have resulted in mutually beneficial outcomes. And then I want to talk about this slightly more intangible piece. Other people have referenced it. How he supports and indeed embodies the organizational culture of the Conservancy. This culture, while strong, can be fragile. It needs care and nurturing. Our culture is built on collaboration, respect, and consensus, as well as striving for excellence in the work we do. Almost without exception, we collectively have the will and the ability to talk things through, to disagree, to listen, to laugh, and through collaboration and respect, we build consensus and do good work. Mark has always been keenly aware of this and indeed models it when conducting meetings, hiring staff members, meeting with donors, and approaching new members for the board committees and the advisory council. Protecting and preserving this precious culture has always been top of mind. We have much to be grateful for. Thank you for your hard work, for unstintingly shouldering the responsibility of running this organization, for your strategic leadership, your good management, your kindness, your compassion, and your ability to see the good and the valuable in all of us. You have encouraged all of us to play to our individual strengths. The accounting salamanders pulling garlic mustard, constructing boardwalks, working on committees, approaching donors, stuffing envelopes, repairing fences, or any of the many and varied tasks are taken on by staff and volunteers. This multitude of parts make up the whole, and you have overseen and supported all of these complex and moving pieces. We wish you and Sandy all the best in this next chapter. We're lucky to retain you for a while to help us with acquisition, recognizing that you are moving towards retirement. Speaking of retirement, I happen to know that it's a really good gig. It will give you the opportunity to do lots of great things. Spend more time with family and friends, do some reading, some writing, some traveling, some gardening, some sailing, just doing more stuff that you want to do. But one of the huge benefits of retirement, and sadly, not often recognized publicly, is the ability to take a nap whenever and wherever you want. So you'll probably need a little comfy pillow for your nap. So I made one. And I hope that inspires you to dream of your next sailing adventure.
don't know who that guy was. I just want to say that we have done this together. It's been the honor of my life to do this job. We've done it together. So thank you very much.
And with that, I think we're going to adjourn the meeting. So I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting, or actually, consider a motion to adjourn the meeting. Yeah, okay. And seconded? Third? Great. So you're welcome to stay for another half hour or so and enjoy some refreshment. We have a cake. And there's also a book. You're Courtney City, right? Yes, over there, where you can leave your well wishes for Mark. So thank you, everyone. Very kind.